for the intro.
Cool. Okay, good morning, everybody. You can see you all coming in now, which is awesome. Thank you very much for joining us for the Systems and Workflow Bootcamp. If this is your first session of today, welcome. Thank you for being here. If this is your second or maybe even third session of today, then I salute you. You've clearly got some good coffee, and I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us. Just whilst we're waiting for a few more people to join, if you can just go to the chat box at the bottom, it should be on the bottom taskbar of Zoom, and just drop a comment in there and let me know if you've been to either Amanda's session or James's session so far. Just let me know what's been your biggest takeaway from either of those two sessions so far, because I've sat through both of them, and the amount of insights and knowledge they've shared around marketing systems as well as pricing and sales systems it's insane. Like, there's so much value in what they shared, and I just think, you know, if we could all, in an ideal world, if we all had unlimited time to go and implement this stuff, it would be great. But I guess the reality is that we don't have all the time in the world to do that. Cool. So Gavin says all sessions so far, marketing map and gloss method. Ashley says was on the last session with James. Danielle says sat in all three, great insights and action to take. Yeah, absolutely. Ben, all so far, welcome, mate. Georgie, love listening to James. James is just, yeah, he's an inspirational guy, isn't he? He could say anything and you'd be like, wow, it makes so much sense. Awesome. All right. Thank you very much for doing that. So let's move forwards. This is the third session of this morning's agenda. We started off with marketing systems. We just had pricing and sales. And what we're going to be focused on right now is onboarding systems, because you've done all the hard work so far. You've gone through the effort of finding your ideal clients. You've gone through the process of winning them, converting them, pricing them, getting the most optimum price you can that's beneficial for both of you. And now is the time to not just drop the ball, but to continue to shine and to onboard them effectively. So I'm joined by Jax, and we're going to be sharing how you can onboard your clients effectively. And then after this session, the last session of the day, we have Darren from Fathom, who's going to be sharing advisory systems. And that's going to be how you can deliver timely and practical advice to your clients. So just a few housekeeping rules. If this is your first session that you're joining today, mute your phone, close your emails, lock your door and focus. You've taken the time out of your diary to be here. So my big ask for you is to make the most of it. You know, be here to learn, be curious, ask questions, make the most of being with us on Zoom. If you have any questions, please can use the Q&A box and not the chat box. It's going to be really hard to keep track of things in the chat box as we go through. Feel free to talk amongst yourselves there. But if you have a question that you'd like either myself or Jax to answer, then the Q&A box is the best place for that. Remember to get social. There is a hashtag there, Systems and Workflow Bootcamp. It is as long to say as it is to type. So feel free to use that if you've got anything to share on social media. And don't forget to hang around until the end for any bonus workflow templates. Although in this session, we don't have a bonus template, but we do have a bonus offer for you if you are interested in signing up with Pixie or Xama for your AML. Cool. Introductions out of the way. I can see a few more chat messages have come in, so I'll just quickly take a look there. Martin James was good, especially about how to have confidence. Yeah, absolutely right. You know, confidence is key in those pricing and sales discussions. Cool. So onboarding systems, how to streamline and automate your onboarding and AML processes. I'm Jordan. If I haven't met you before, I'm the co-founder here at Pixie. We are a practice management app built for small accounting and bookkeeping firms across the globe. And I'm joined today by Jax from Xama. Jax, do you want to give us a quick intro to who you are?
Hi guys, I'm Jacques. I am Managing Director and Founder at Xama Technologies, and we specialize in products around anti-money laundering identity verification, and very much focuses on the UK accounting market, looking at the AML process, but also the broader process of risk management across your client base. And great to have a partnership with Pixie where we can integrate our platform into Pixie really nicely. Hopefully what I'll show you today will give you a taste of where we're going in that partnership, in sort of streamlining and automating that process for Pixie members.
Definitely. Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So Jax is going to share a demo with us a little bit later on about how the integration works and how you can really streamline the process of onboarding your clients, completing those AML and risk assessment checks, and then capturing that information and feeding it back into Pixie as well. So the agenda for this session is really straightforward. Before we jump into the actual tactical mapping out of what the systems and processes looks like, I just want to start with a few really simple definitions and understandings around what exactly is onboarding and what should it do, because onboarding is more than just a process of turning new clients into onboarded clients. There's a bit more that goes into it, and there's a bit more to think about. And we're going to be looking at what are some of the key elements that you need to cover during that onboarding process. Once we've got that initial piece sorted, then we're going to move on to the actual technology that you need. And we're going to share with you an example tech stack and process and a live demo as well to show you exactly how all of this can fit together into one really neat, slick and streamlined process so that onboarding clients, or at least one part of onboarding clients, can be as automated and streamlined in your firm as possible. So starting with a really broad question here, what exactly is onboarding? So I'd really like you, if you could just go to the chat box for me, please, and just drop me a quick message in there and let me know, what do you think onboarding is, or what does onboarding mean to you in your firm? And I'd just love to see some of the answers that are coming in. Give you all a second to type. Ashley says setting clients up. Claire says lots of time spent getting info. Danielle says a smooth transition from prospect to client. Georgie says a key area of focus. Kate, getting info. Jamie, transitioning a client from a lead to a client. Sean says bringing on new clients. Marianne, automated info. Martin, bringing a client from agreeing our proposal into a fully functioning operating client. Kieran, hey Kieran, process from when a client signs proposal and everything that happens from that point. Niall, a pain in the backside. Well, at least one of us is honest here today, guys. Carl, really love that. Our time to wow. Absolutely. So you guys have covered off a lot of the key points here. Onboarding is, I think, setting your client up for success. One of the things that you heard James mention in his presentation is that a lot of the things that can go wrong in a relationship with a client starts at the outset with the proposal and with that onboarding piece. So the onboarding process is a time where you can set your client up for success to make sure that your relationship with them is successful as possible. It's also a time to be proactive and preemptive. And what I mean by this is that when a client joins your firm, they're going to have lots of questions. They're going to want to know how things work, how you do things, what they need to do, when they need to do, how they need to send things to you. So the onboarding process is your time to be proactive, but also to be preemptive. And what I mean by preemptive is that you can preempt all of the questions that they're going to ask you. You know, from onboarding clients in your firm, what the top 10 questions you get asked are during those first 30 or 60 days. So by knowing those questions, you can preempt it and build those questions into your onboarding process so that for future clients, they don't have to ask you the questions. You've already given them the answers. And the benefit of doing that is that you drastically reduce the amount of support that you have to give to people during that onboarding process, because they're not going to keep running to you with emails and phone calls saying, how do I do this? Or what do I do for here? You've already preempted it and given them that information. The third part is about setting you up for success, because this is a two-way relationship. It's not just about your clients, it's also about you. It's about putting you and your team in the best possible position to service this client within the scope that you've agreed, to make sure that the client is profitable, they're enjoyable to work with, and that you get the most out of the relationship. Oops, I have just lost my webcam. The joys of live webinars. There we go. The fourth thing is all about managing expectations. Again, just touching on something James was talking about in his sales and pricing session earlier. The onboarding process is about managing your clients' expectations about what exactly the service looks like, what they're going to get, how it's going to work. Because if you manage those expectations correctly up front, then it's going to reduce the amount of, not questions, but almost like concerns down the line where they're not sure about this is how it was going to work. And that often leads to breakdowns in the relationship and potentially clients leaving. The fourth part is obviously really important, and this is something Jacques is going to touch on later. There's an element of compliance and legal compliance that has to take part in the onboarding process. AML is one of those risk assessments, making sure that your clients are legit, that you can work with them properly, and that you meet the requirements of your association, your membership body. And then the sixth thing that I've got down here, which Carl mentioned in the comments, I'm really glad that you mentioned that, Carl, is that onboarding is a chance to wow, because you've gone through that process of winning the client, marketing to them, pricing them really well, agreeing that scope, sending them a really slick proposal and go proposal. don't drop the ball now. Onboarding is the chance to keep wowing them, show them exactly what it's like to work with you and your firm, show them that the benefits that you're going to bring them, and make them think that they've made the right decision. Because often during that onboarding process, there's always going to be some element of buyer's remorse, people thinking, did I really make the right decision going with this accountant that's charging me 500 quid extra a month compared to Joe down the road who just does tax returns? So the onboarding process is really your chance to wow and kind of make an impact on that client early on. So now that we understand exactly what onboarding is and what it's trying to achieve, what are the different elements of the onboarding process that we need to look at? Now, there's a few here, but I've really tried to condense it down into a few core ones. So there's probably a few missing. The first, obviously, is letters of engagement. You've got to have these letters of engagement clearly defined up front. Again, just to reference something James mentioned in his presentation earlier, if you don't have services outside of the letters of engagement, there's a real risk factor here. Like if you're doing work that's outside of the initial scope and it hasn't been defined in these letters of engagement, then there's a bit more risk involved in you doing that. So having these letters of engagement firmed up is a really important element of the onboarding process. The next part is welcome emails and communications. You've got to be opening that communication and being proactive and preemptive with your communications during the onboarding process. And I'll show you a little bit later on some of the technology that you can use to automate these email communications, to automate entire email sequences even, so that you can send this information to your clients and drip feed it to them during that initial period. A number of you mentioned this as a bit of a pain in the arse, information requests and collection. Obviously, you've got to get that information in during the onboarding process. It's kind of key to being able to deliver the service that you've agreed to deliver. It's not that enjoyable, but it's a necessary part of the process. And again, hopefully what you'll see a little bit later on will help to streamline and automate some of that more for you. The fourth part of onboarding is just to schedule the services. You've got all the services agreed in the proposal with the client. Now you've got to actually schedule them. What I mean by scheduling them is scheduling them as work in your diary, in your team's diary, and managing that capacity throughout the year so that you always know what tasks you're doing for clients, when they're due, and who's going to be working on them. A couple more things here. You've got the 64A agent authorizations, AML checks, which is something we're going to be looking at in a little bit more detail later on in the session. Professional clearance, just making sure that you go through that process as well. And then we also have a final step, which is setting them up on all the systems and apps that you're using. And firms today are using a real variety of apps and systems. So this in itself can be a bit of a process sometimes, just getting everybody set up. So we've looked at the different elements of the onboarding process. The next question really is like, what tech can we use to streamline and automate some of this? And I've tried to summarize it as best as I can into these 5 key things here. So the first piece of tech that you're going to need to really make the most of this process is a really good practice management and workflow application, because what that will allow you to do is a number of things. It will allow you to store the client information, to trigger certain onboarding processes and sequences where you've got email templates, where you're requesting information, where you've got tasks and a schedule of services for you and your team to be working on. And all of that can be driven from the proposal. And what I would recommend is that you also use a piece of technology to actually create these proposals and letters of engagement. So James in the session earlier shared how GoProposal is a really, really fantastic tool to use for generating these proposals and letters of engagement. There are other tools out there like Practignition, etc. But obviously the one that you saw earlier was GoProposal, which do a really great job of just not the pricing piece, but also the letters of engagement and the compliance piece on the back of that as well. The third thing that I've got down here is a document portal, and this might be built into your practice management and workflow app, or it might be something separate. Obviously, it's up to you depending on what tools you use. The fourth thing that I've got is an Aml platform, which is a piece of technology you can use to actually do AML checks for your clients. And you're going to see how Xama works a little bit later on, which is a really, really awesome, intuitive, easy to use platform that Jacques and the team are building, and they've got some really huge developments coming up in terms of what Xama is going to be able to do. So I'm really excited about him showing you that a little bit later on in this session. And then last but not least, I've got Zapier. Many of you might have used Zapier before, many of you might have not. What Zapier allows you to do is connect different apps together that otherwise wouldn't have a native integration. And what this allows you to do is connect different pieces of technology together to accomplish different things within your onboarding process. And I'll show you a little bit later on how you can use Zapier to trigger some really quite interesting things in your onboarding flow. So I've just jotted down some apps here as examples for what you could use here. Obviously, Pixie is a big one that you could use for your practice management and workflow. Go Proposal being the main one for your proposals and letters of engagement. We've also got Pixie there as the document portal thing. We do have file storage and file requesting built into the app. Xama down as the AML platform, and Zapier down there as Zapier. So now that we understand what these apps are and what they can do, the next piece is how do we actually map them out? What does the process look like in terms of connecting these apps up to really build this automated and streamlined onboarding process and workflow? Cool, which leads me nicely into this. So hopefully this doesn't look too overwhelming for you right now, but I'm going to explain this in a little bit of detail and explain how everything works. So you should be able to see my mouse hovering over things here. If you can't, then just go with what I'm saying. We're going to start with Go Proposal as the initial proposal piece. And what this is going to do is it's going to generate a proposal for all of the services. It's going to generate the letters of engagement, and you're going to send that to the client. The client's either going to say yes or no. Once they say yes, what you can do is you can then connect that up to Pixie via Zapier. And what that will allow you to do is to pass all of the information from your proposal in Go Proposal into Pixie and create a brand new client. So if the name of the business is Joe Blogs Limited, it will pass that through into Pixie, create that as a client, and you'll have Joe Blogs Limited set up in Pixie. What you will also have is a schedule of all the services added to Pixie as well. So for example, if in your Go Proposal it's two proposals, it's quite hard to say in one sentence. You've got bookkeeping, payroll, year-end accounts, personal tax. What you're able to do is to pass those services from the proposal through into Pixie and trigger them as scheduled services. So what that means is that you don't need to go in there and create the tasks. You don't need to set them up. As long as you've got the templates for those services, you can trigger them so that they get added to that brand new client automatically. So straight away, in a couple of seconds, we've gone from the proposal being signed, the client being created, and we've got a schedule of services that have been added to that client ready for you and the team to start working on. The next thing that we can do, moving up slightly to the top right, is to trigger an onboarding workflow. So in this onboarding workflow, this is the time where you can have email templates to request things, information. So you might have an email template saying, these are the things that we need to get from you to get started, and then a link to the document portal. You might have an email that contains like a welcome pack. So coming back to Carl's comment earlier about making that wow impression, think about the things that you can include in this onboarding workflow and in these emails to really make an impact on your new clients early on. I know that some firms have done some really interesting work here, and they've created like infographics. So an infographic is like a visual image that shows like a journey of what's going to happen in the first 30 or 60 days. And then they've got dotted on that little visual roadmap saying, day 1, we're going to do this. Day 20, we should have done this. Day 30, we should have done this. And what that does is it just manages those expectations with your clients up front. It helps to preempt and be proactive about the questions they're going to ask. And I can assure you, not many accounting firms are sending out things like that. So if you were to do that, it's going to be adding a huge amount of value to that relationship early on and making a wow impression. Other things that you'll build into that onboarding workflow are things like going through the 64-rate authorization process, sending a professional clearance to any previous accountants, setting them up on the different apps and systems, making sure that you've done a kickoff call with the team, for example, to make sure that the team understand exactly who the client is, how they work, what the services are, etc. Moving down to the bottom right, once the client's been added, you can also then trigger automatically the AML checks to happen in Xama. And you're going to see a live demo of how this works in action a little bit later on. So don't worry if you're struggling to follow along. Hopefully you'll see it a bit more visually from both yours and the client's perspective a little bit later on when Jacques does his demo. So you'll see the AML checks triggered in Xama. That information gets fed back into Pixie and saved, ready for you to see. And all of that happens through a Zapier integration as well. So the Zapier is really at the heart of some of these integrations. I know that somebody asked in a session earlier on about a native integration between Pixie and Go Proposal. All I can say right now is that, yeah, we've started talks and yeah, I can't really say much else from there. So there's a question here from Rosalind. Does Pixie also integrate with Practignition? Yes, we do. We have an integration with Practignition, again, through Zapier. So both of our integrations are currently through Zapier. Cool. So once you've onboarded that client, you've done your AML checks, you've triggered the onboarding workflow, you've done that information requesting, which can all happen automatically, by the way. You can build these email templates, you can put the kind of key information in there that you need to request with a link to the document portal, send that to the client, set up reminders to nag them to upload the information. Then we move forwards into some other possible opportunities. And I've put 4 examples here that you could use using Zapier. The first is using something like MailChimp. And it doesn't have to be MailChimp. It could be any other email marketing platform or provider. MailChimp is just the one that I picked. It was top of mind. And what you could do in here is a few things. First of all, you could make it so that when the new client joins your firm, they automatically get added to a mailing list in MailChimp for sending out monthly newsletters. So for example, if you send out a monthly email to your clients with a newsletter, and you use something like MailChimp or another email marketing platform for that, you could automate them adding to that process. What you could also do is you could build a drip sequence. And what a drip sequence is a series of emails that get dripped out every 2, 3, 4 days. And I think it was, I can't remember the name of the firm I was speaking to. They've built a drip sequence in MailChimp that runs, I think, for the first 60 days. And it's like 1 or 2 emails a week. And what they're doing in these emails is, coming back to my earlier point, they're proactively and preempting all of the questions that they're going to ask. So they went through a process of writing down all the questions that they get asked when they onboard new clients. They turn these questions into emails, and they set up an email sequence so that what happens is when they bring new clients on board, it automatically triggers this sequence in MailChimp, and they receive this series of emails welcoming them to the firm and answering all the questions, often before they've even thought of them themselves. Moving down to the second option, we've got an option here for forms and questionnaires. So through Zapier, there's a number of different integrations with Google Forms, Typeform, Jotform, SurveyMonkey, every other form builder imaginable that has a Zapier integration, and there is a lot on there. And what this allows you to do is to send forms and questionnaires to your clients and then feed that information back automatically from the form into something like Pixie. So, for example, instead of having an email in Pixie with a list of items and a link to the document portal, you could build a questionnaire in something like Google Forms or any of the other form builders, send the link to that questionnaire, and then that information gets fed back through via Zapier and saved directly to the client's record. So there's multiple ways to skin the cat in this scenario. Another really cool example here is using Slack. So I know that a number of people use Slack as an internal communication tool. And one of the use cases that I've come across people using Slack through Pixie and Zapier is that they'll send a notification to their team automatically when new clients join the firm. So for example, if I just had a proposal meeting with a client, they've accepted the proposal, what that would then do is it would trigger a message that gets sent into a team Slack channel to say, hey, Joe Blogs Limited has just joined as a client. Here's everything you need to know. And then you could pull through all of the information about their services. So it just helps to open up that communication between you and the team. And it's also a nice way to celebrate new wins. The team can jointly celebrate bringing new clients on, which is always a good thing to have in place. And then the fourth and final option I've got here at the bottom is triggering some kind of appointment scheduling with Calendly. You could integrate with Calendly. There's a couple of others like You Can Book Me, Acuity Scheduling. There's quite a few out there. And you could automate some of those things as well, so that when you bring new clients on, you automate meeting request emails that go out to them and say, book an onboarding meeting where we'll run through X, Y, Z, or book a meeting with your client manager. If you're a slightly bigger firm, you've got client managers that are looking after clients instead of yourself. So the point being here is that there is a lot of opportunity in terms of what you can build onto your onboarding process. It doesn't just need to be that kind of tick box exercise of this is the information we need, this is the compliance that we need to meet, and this is how we're going to set them up. There can be a lot more that happens using some of the technology that I've shared with you just now. Cool. I'm going to take a breather now. I'm going to hand over to Jacques, who's going to give you a live onboarding demo to explain how some of this actually works in action. I can see there's quite a few questions in the Q&A box. So whilst Jacques is doing this, I'll try my best to answer some of those for you. Cool. Jacques, I'm not sure if you're there. If you just...
I am. I'm just going to share my screen. So, is that all right? Can everybody see?
Yep, got that.
Okay, great. Right, so hi everybody. I'm just going to turn my video back on as well, so you can see me. Right, so So thanks, Jordan. Really nice overview of what's possible. Like you already mentioned, we use Zapier as well in our integration with Pixie, and it works really, really well. What I'm going to demonstrate to you is sort of a part of the starting part of what Jordan was just presenting. I'm going to start off the process, which typically can start off by approving a proposal. From Go Proposal, somebody asked about practice ignition. That's totally possible as well. Or you can obviously start off the process by just creating a client within Pixie as well. But I'm going to just sign a proposal, and I'm going to confirm that. You can see here I've got Xama Pixie Demo is the company that I am in the process of onboarding. Once that proposal has been signed, as Jordan mentioned, that can trigger a process by which that client is created within Pixie. So I should be able to find a client for that Pixie demo within Pixie already. And this is basically my client record. And as the director of that company who signed the proposal, I've already been created as a contact within here as well. When you set up the AML solution with Xama Technologies, we're not a third-party platform where you have to go in and log in and enter information. We bring all of the information that you need and what you want to interact with straight back into Pixie. So if I edit this contact, you'll see on here, Pixie is really good in that you can create loads of custom fields. And part of our implementation is about creating some of those custom fields that we need and you need for anti-money laundering purposes within your contact record. So in here, you can see all of these are blank at the moment, but these are all fields you'll be familiar with, date of birth and so on. And then if I go down to the bottom, there's more information about the anti-money laundering information that we'll be pushing back into Pixie. Now, when that proposal comes in from Go Proposal, it is possible to automate the process and just automatically kick off that process to the customer. But I wanted to put in a pause there just so that we can discuss things as we go. But what you can do is automatically toggle this queue for onboarding to yes as part of that contact creation. And then as you create that record, but I'm just doing that manually, and I'm going to save this record. You can see on this record, all I need at this point is my first name, last name, and my email address. All of the rest of the information is blank at the moment. Now, when that record is created, again, that's something that kicks off within Zapier, but that will fire off an email to your customer or to the director that's been created within Pixie as part of that initial process. So when I go back to my emails, I should be seeing an email coming through here. That email has just come through. And this email, again, because we use Zapier as part of the process, this email will come from your accounting firm. You can specify what is within this email that goes out to your customer. I've just done a very simple one here, but that email will always include a link that your customer can follow either from their laptop or what we typically see is that they do this over their phone. When I follow that link, it opens up. I'm just going to make this slightly bigger so that you can see, but it opens up a wizard or what we call the onboarding journey that the customer goes through. You can see it's very simple. The idea is that it displays very clearly and easy to follow on somebody's phone. And again, this can be customized. So I've got my logo on here, but that can be your logo. You can customize the message that your customer will see initially when they go onto this journey as well. And we want to do two things. We want to gather from them their current home address. So that's something I'm going to just populate here with my address. And then the next step, these are all just basic information that we can't gather from anywhere else, that we need to get from the customer in order to run anti-money laundering checks. The next one is the identity document. So quite often, this is a real struggle to securely gather somebody's identity document and then to verify that. And we do that all through this particular journey. You can do passport, you can do driving license. Driving license just asks for both sides of the document. The passport asks for only the front. When you're doing this on the phone, very easy to just take a picture. I'm sure you are familiar with that sort of journeys. If you sign up to a bank or whatever, that you take a picture of your document. But I'm on my laptop, so I'm just going to pop one in from that I've already scanned in. When I'm doing these public ones, unfortunately, I can't use a real document. So this is my passport, but all the information has been smudged out of it, which means that I'm not going to get a very good result. But hopefully nobody will steal my identity either. So while this document is uploading, it takes a couple of seconds. But we, as Xama Technologies, we don't perform any of the checks ourselves. We are essentially a provider who connects you into some other providers who are known within the industry as leading service providers. And we use ID scan for the identity verification. So it's not just UK documents, it's documents from all over the world that it would capture and verify and extract the data out of. Once your customer has completed this journey, that's basically them done. You've not really done anything other than toggle that onboarding journey on, which could have been automated as part of the process. But once that customer has completed that information, you will see that all those fields that were blank at the start of this process has now been populated. Now, some of these I can't populate because my document had all the information smudged out, but things like date of birth, we will extract from the passport and populate this in here as well. But you can see the document in here has not gotten good results, and therefore some of that information is missing. What I bring out into Pixie is fairly high level information. So what is the result of the document, what type of document it is, and we'll bring through things like the passport number and driving license number, which might be useful for you to have within Pixie. But if you want to see any more information about that document, we always bring through a link as part of the process as well. And this link, if you're logged into our platform, you can copy that link into your browser, and this will open up a report. And this report has a download in here. You can download that, and it will give you a full report of that document and all the verification that was done on top of it. Again, now this document is pretty empty because it basically couldn't extract all the information. But normally there's about 2 pages of checks that's carried out on this document. Obviously, if it's a bad image, you can come and see why that hasn't happened. What we also do, we extract that passport number normally, if it's available, and then we follow this document extraction up with an anti-money laundering check. Now, I was still able to run this anti-money laundering check because I had my address and I had my name, and I still got a pass result, and that result came back into Pixie, no problem. But I can also see more information about that AML result. So if I have a refer result, I can go in and see why that is a refer result, or an alert is the other option on AML checks. If I take that link and I again take that, just pushes that into the browser, that'll give me all of the information that was used as part of that anti-money laundering check. So in this instance, I've just got my name and address. If I could scan in the document, it would also submit my document number as part of the anti-money laundering check and my date of birth. So we get typically very, very good match rates when it comes to anti-money laundering, because we submit such a large amount of information as part of the input data. If I scroll down here, you can see this is all the information from our provider about the databases that it was checked against. And you can see why it has passed, or if you get a refer result, why it has failed. As part of the anti-money laundering check, we also do a politically exposed person and sanctions checks. Now, it is quite interesting. I do match a politically exposed person, somebody in Congo. So it's always worth coming in, checking this report, this detailed report, and looking at whether there's a potential politically exposed person match there. Just because I'm politically exposed or potentially politically exposed doesn't mean I will fail the anti-money laundering check. I can still pass. And that's basically the process. You've got all of that information within Pixie. You've got all of that detailed information available from within our platform. Now, we do like the process of streamlining that initial onboarding side of things, but our platform aims to go further than just that. So if I scroll down on this particular record, you can see there's a toggle down here which says auto check periodically, which I've just untoggled, but it was on. And that basically means that we will perform an anti-money laundering check on this contact every 365 days. Now, that is completely up to you how often you want to do that, or whether you want to turn on that automatic checks. But those are the kind of things which our platform enable you to do, so that if I have a refer result a year from now, you'll get a notification to say that this contact, his anti-money laundering result has changed. And so you'll just get an updated link. The AML last date that the check was run would change, but that all happens automatically within the background across your list of customers. And we've got some pretty exciting plans in terms of the future of how we're going to even enhance that further. There's two ways you can use this platform or this implementation within Pixie. You can do that full onboarding process for your new customers, but we also allow you to do checks straight from within Pixie just on the AML side of things. So if you already have all the information of a particular customer, so you already have their document, you have their information, their home address, you can come in, you can type that information into this contact record, and you wouldn't send them a request. You can just run an AML check straight from within here. It'll bring back the AML result, and you can again register that customer to be checked automatically into the future. So if you're migrating into Pixie and you have a list of customers that you want to get onto the platform, that's typically how you would do it. You can also update easily on the platform somebody's home address, so that the next time it does the check, it uses their most up-to-date information. So it's quite flexible how you can do everything within Pixie. There's really no need to leave Pixie in order to manage that AML process. But yes, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. It's pretty straightforward, pretty easy to use.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that demo. We've had a couple of questions come in, so I think we'll just answer these very quickly if that's okay, because they're related to the AML checks. First one is, can you do AML checks in Ireland?
If you're talking about Northern Ireland, then that is true, yes, because that's part of the United Kingdom. If you're talking about the Republic of Ireland, I've had a couple of conversations with people about that. Both the identity document verification would work, We also have the PEP and sanctions monitoring, which is international databases. The anti-money laundering checks are basically matching somebody to their address and those databases I've just shown you. That doesn't work in the Republic of Ireland at the moment. There is actually, I could go on this topic, but I won't. But there is less good information in terms of those databases for the Republic of Ireland. We are looking to potentially add that. But what we actually advise people to do is to do the identity verification, to do the PEP and sanctions checks across those, and then to have a separate process of doing the proof of address, which we will also be looking to add into this process. So you can get a proof of address in a different way through the platform.
Perfect. Okay. I'm going to try and roll two questions into one here. Does this only work in the UK, or could it work somewhere like Australia?
It's very much the same answer as the Republic of Ireland one. The identity document certainly works in Australia, South Africa, wherever, and the PEP and sanctions are international as well. The AML is very specific in terms of the databases we match against, so that's UK only at the moment. Yeah,
okay. There's a question here from Jamie. I really like this integration. It's the missing piece in our onboarding journey. If we sign up, do we get an onboarding session to set it up? Yeah, so we'll be sharing a little bit later on, Jamie, in the next few minutes, exactly how you can get all of this set up, pretty much done for you. So we'll be covering that in the next 5 or so minutes. Perfect. Another quick question here, actually. How would you do this if you have more than one director?
Very good question. At the moment, you have to add, you can add additional contacts as long as you have that director's name and address. You would add them as contacts, and you would then just toggle that on, and that would add them to the process. We have a really exciting roadmap, which I won't put timelines against it. But we're already outside of our Pixie integration working on integrations into Companies House. And as part of that creation of the client and creation of that initial contact, we will be looking to pull out any PSC director information from Companies House and adding that automatically into the process. That's exciting, but sort of predictable. But as part of that process, we will also be looking at Companies House and monitoring those clients for you so that we can automatically take people off periodic checks when they resign from a company, but also alert you when directors are joining into a company so that you can add them on automatically or through sort of a manual clicking OK, and you can then add them in. And there's a bit of a workflow around that, but it's really quite exciting what we're doing around that part of automating that entire process much better for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of the reasons why we were so happy to partner with Xama, is because these guys are really innovating the way AML checks work and the entire process. So it's going to be really exciting to see how it develops over the next few months and years. Jacques, thank you very much for doing that demo. If anyone's got any more questions for you about Xama, what's the best place for them to reach you?
Really, the best place is to go to our website. You can either book a demo, but we encourage you to just sign up for a free account. There's no commitment or registration of credit card details or anything. That just puts you onto our system. You can then book an immediate meeting after us to get this all set up. We help you with the setup process. It runs through Zapier. You can do it on a free Zapier account. So it's all free, and you just pay for what you need, really. We only charge you for the checks that you need. There's no commitment in terms of buying checks for 2 years. You can buy them in as little as 2 AML checks at a time. But yeah, we help you through that process. So if you sign up for an account, you sort of enter into that conversation. But if you don't want to do that, just book a demo through our website as well. You'll get through to me, and I'll have that conversation with you.
Perfect. All right. Thank you very much. Guys, I'm conscious of time. We do have a fourth and final session coming up at 12 o'clock, looking at advisory systems. So I just want to recap very quickly on what some of the things that we've covered today. So the first key takeaway is like mapping out that onboarding process. I actually put a post on LinkedIn yesterday, which is slightly ironic, about when is good advice not good advice? And good advice isn't good advice when your hair's on fire. And what I mean by that is if you're absolutely slammed busy and you have no time in the world, you probably don't have time to map out your processes. Like it's a perfect answer in an ideal world, but oftentimes running a small business, even in Pixie ourselves, we're busy. It's hard to find the time to build out our own systems. So you can use some of the templates inside Pixie. There's an onboarding one that you can use as a starting point. You've got the effortless sales system that you saw from James earlier that you can use as a process for sales and pricing. You've got Xama here that you can integrate with Pixie to automate some of that. And this is where it comes into choosing what your onboarding tech stack looks like. Figure out exactly what apps you want to use. You don't have to use Pixie or Xama. There are plenty of other apps out there. Obviously, I'm biased, so Jacques. We would recommend you use Pixie and Xama for that onboarding and also practice management piece. But then the last key takeaway here is just to keep iterating and constantly looking for ways to improve things. God, I keep quoting James Ashford a lot today. He's just a very quotable guy. He said, version 1 is better than version none. And I think that is so true for the onboarding process. Just build an onboarding process and then keep iterating it. Make version 2, make version 3, add some emails in here, integrate with Xama, build out that drip sequence where you're answering all those questions, set up some additional automations with Slack or Calendly. It doesn't have to look like that process map we saw earlier on day 1. That's just an idea of what's possible. What it needs to be is a process that you can keep building on and keep tweaking over time. Just to remind you, we do have a workflow template library available on our website where you can go and download a number of different workflow templates for different services, apps, anything you need. We're constantly going to be adding to that library over the next few months. I've had a couple of questions about the actual templates themselves. They do only work in Pixie workspaces. So the template that you download will be a Pixie file. You won't be able to use it anywhere else. You won't even be able to open it anywhere else. But if you have a Pixie account, you can go and import it in literally just a few clicks. And if you don't have a Pixie account, then go and start a free trial. It's 30 days free of charge. We don't ask for any credit card information. You can cancel anytime. It's completely up to you. And you can bring those templates in and have a play around with how it all works. Now, I did mention that we had a bit of an offer for you guys today. It's not so much of an offer, it's more about how Pixie and Xama are partnered up together. So if you were to want to use Pixie and Xama together to automate some of that onboarding and AML process, then what we have available for you guys is free setup with the Xama integration. So all of those fields that you saw, all of the apps that need to be built, Jacques and the team will do all of that for you. You'll get £15 free AML credit to use and play around with. And then the pricing, the partner pricing, if you're a Pixie customer, is £1.60 per AML check, which is incredibly affordable. I think for full document, I think AML checks £1.60, and then the full AML plus all the document extraction checks is £3 something. Jacques will be able to confirm the exact pricing there. So if you are interested in that, if you're already a Pixie user, please contact Jacques and Xama. If you're not yet a Pixie customer or a Xama user, start a free trial of both, get them hooked up, have a play around, import some templates, and hopefully you can get all of this stuff up and running. Last but not least, before we finish up for this session, if you are interested in learning more about how to build your own workflows and processes, so that process map that we saw earlier where I mapped out Go Proposal through to Pixie, through to Xama, through to Zapier, if you want to learn how to build these out and tweak them and add emails and all this great stuff, then we're actually hosting a workflow masterclass later this month where we'll get really hands-on in terms of actually building out these processes, looking at the various elements, playing around with what can be done and what can't be done, and helping you guys to map out some really cool onboarding and service processes. So if you want to register for that, I'm just looking for my chat box, which always seems to disappear when I share my screen. Nope, still can't find it. Okay. Then I will post the link in here. There we go. I've had a question here about slides. Yeah, I can send you a copy of the slides. If you can please email me, my email address I'll put in the chat box now is jordan@usepixie.com, and I will send you a copy of the slides. All of the recordings are going to be available afterwards as well for you to watch back. There are a couple more questions. I'm just conscious of time. There was a question about Zapier and the cost of Zapier, and this is one that's really interesting because often you will look at Zapier and you will see that as an additional subscription. Oh, it's another $40 a month for the professional plan, for example. This is true, but the way to look at Zapier is different. Zapier is replacing a person within your firm. Might not be a full-time person, might not even be a part-time person, but it is replacing somebody doing something. And the benefit of using something like Zapier is that it doesn't have a sick day. It doesn't take time off. It doesn't finish at 5 o'clock. and it makes things happen all the time. So if you can take this process that somebody is already doing manually and put it into Zapier, yes, there is a cost associated with Zapier, but the benefit of having it in Zapier is that it will just keep running automatically without you or anybody else having to worry or think about it. So there's almost some saving to be had there. But what's also really interesting is that you don't have to use Zapier just for this kind of initial onboarding or practice management piece. There is a whole world of possibility available for what you can use Zapier for. You could automate multiple parts of your practice, from marketing, from sales, to onboarding, to internal communications, to internal reporting. There is literally so much that can be done. And by building all of that out in Zapier as well, you're bringing the cost down, and it's being spread across multiple things. So I think at first, yeah, the cost of something like Zapier might be a bit of a harder pill to swallow because it's another subscription. But I think if you justify it in terms of it's replacing somebody doing this manually, therefore I don't have to worry about it, but also I can add more and more stuff into this and it will just keep doing it at pretty much the same cost, then it's completely a no-brainer. There's a question here about Workflow Masterclass. I did post a link in the chat. I'll just post it again now. I've found the chat box again. It keeps disappearing. And on that note, Jacques, I'm going to say thank you very much for you joining us and for doing that demo of Xama. Really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody that joined in for this session as well. I've got the Fathom session starting at 12 o'clock, so I'm going to jump off now and hopefully see some of you there. See you later.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jordan.